What's going on, my abstractions? Ab-Stract here, and this is the Ab-Stract section. Today we're going to be covering our first Bleach versus battle, so we're going to be talking about Toshiro Hitsugaya versus Nnoitora Gilga. I'm making this video because it's a style clash and there are a lot of variables to consider. Also, it's not so cut and dry as people might think. Like how I did in my sakura versus hidan video, we're going to go over their strengths, weaknesses, durability, and anything else I think may help the conversation. If you're watching this video, I will assume you're familiar with Bleach terms, phrases, and at least a basic understanding of how battles work in their universe. So sit back, relax, let me do the talking, and enjoy the show. Subscribe to the channel. Starting with Nnoitora's weapon, Santa Teresa. It's a giant dual-sided axe that takes the shape of a crescent moon. It comes equipped with a chain and is often held enthroned by Nnoitora. As an Arrancar, Nnoitora is privy to an assortment of abilities and techniques, but in his case specifically, he has enhanced Hierro, which is the natural armor for an Arrancar, giving him a higher durability, and something called the Indies Radar, which is an advanced version of the Pesquisa. This allows him to gauge the strength and overall spiritual power an opponent has. Everything else is basically in the standard Espada starter kit, you know, Sonido, Zero Osculas, Ground Ray Zero, Bala, and of course, a Resurreccion. When in his release state, Nnoitora gains an extra set of arms, and in each arm he gains a scythe. It's also important to note that upon his release, all damage and wounds inflicted heal. On top of that, he gains access to high speed regeneration and a boost to all of his basic stats. Combat ability. We see Nnoitora in a total of 1 altercation and 2 fights, the 1 altercation being Ichigo, the 2 fights being against Neliel and Kenpachi, the smoke god Zaraki. In his short confrontation with Ichigo, he is completely dominating him like badly. There is nothing Ichigo can do. Now, this is because he had literally just finished a battle with Grimmjow, so Ichigo was nowhere near 100%. In his mini battle with Neliel, Nnoitora struggles to keep up in almost every aspect. She outspeeds him, her strength is greater, and his Zero proves to be ineffective. She also has no problem cutting him and avoiding all of his attacks. Moving on to the Kenpachi fight, this is where things are going to get very opinionated. I'm not going to break down every moment of the fight, more so the psychology behind Kenpachi and why him versus Nnoitora isn't really a feat or praiseworthy battle for him, and honestly this deserves a video of its own, which I will do in the future. Now guys, it's important to understand that Kenpachi is only ever looking for one thing, and that's a good fight. If you're not someone who he would take seriously in the beginning, all you're really doing is just passing the time. Kenpachi be feeling so bad sometimes, he even goes so far as to help his opponents during the fight, mainly in the form of mental amping them or getting them centered, and he does this so he can keep them fighting as long as possible against his overwhelming power. And we've seen this multiple times. We've seen this against Ichigo, Gremmy, Ichinose. His fights with opponents should never be seen as anything more than a time of fun. Yes, this means even if you're somehow whooping his ass and it seems like you may have the upper hand, this is exactly what the Kenpachi wanted, to be bloody, wounded, and immersed in the thralls of battle, because that is literally what brings him the most joy. It's what he lives for. I'll save the rest of this for a Kenpachi psychology video, but yeah. All that to say, Nnoitora does not scale to Kenpachi whatsoever, and this is pretty much goes for all the Espadas that fought the captains of Wako Mundo. If you look at their fights, Byakuya had to fight while protecting Rukia and Hinataro and didn't break a sweat. Mayority made a complete ass out of Xyolopero, also didn't break a sweat. And Kenpachi states he was rusty, out of practice, all while trying to enjoy the fight and make it a long drawn out battle. Now the difficult part here is attempting to correctly scale Nnoitora, but after doing some research and sifting through some forums online, I think I know where he's at. So Espadas 1 through 6 should be power creeping on their higher ranked counterparts each time a resurrection is activated, but this isn't always the case. Here's what I mean. Base Grimmjow loses to base Nnoitora, but resurrected Grimmjow beats base Nnoitora until he also performs a resurrection. Here's where the switch is though. Now base Nnoitora loses the base Ulquiorra, but also resurrected Nnoitora should lose the base Ulquiorra as well. And I'm judging this off the fact that a restored Ichigo after defeating Grimmjow would go on to contend with Ulquiorra in his base. This isn't indicating they were evenly matched, I'm just saying Ichigo was to a point where Ulquiorra did have to take him somewhat serious. Although Orihime did save him from an attack, Ichigo was able to tag him, withstand his Zero and Bankai, and fully block and negate his Zero while holified. But all this means is that Ichigo's holification is about as strong as Ulquiorra's base. When Ulquiorra transforms, he fully eclipses Ichigo's power, so it should look something like this. Nnoitora loses the Bankai Ichigo, but resurrected Nnoitora beats him. And then holified Bankai Ichigo beats resurrected Nnoitora, but it's only a match for Ulquiorra in his base. So if that makes sense and you agree with it, we can move on. If not, you think I'm wrong, tell me why in the comments. Essentially, I'm asking if you think holified Bankai Ichigo beats resurrected Nnoitora at the start of him and Ulquiorra's fight. If you agree with that, then we're on the same track. So at his strongest, Nnoitora should scale to a base Ulquiorra, maybe a little bit higher or lower depending on how you feel about each one of their showings. And if you're wondering how strong a base Ulquiorra is, well, he's able to leave second degree burns on Grimmjow's hand from a Zero, practically two-shot a weaker Ichigo during their first encounter, and casually talk shit to Kisuke and Yoruichi, baiting them into a fight that he assumes they would not win. So yeah, let's talk about Toshiro. He of course wields the strongest ice and snow type Zanpakuto Hyorimaru. Wielding Hyorimaru gives Toshiro access to a variety of icy abilities as well as weather manipulation. Some of his techniques are Sen and Hierro, where he creates many ice pillars which encircle his enemy. Hitsugaya then turns his sword 90 degrees, prompting the ice pillars to move toward the enemy, enveloping and then crushing them with ice. Gunsho Surara creates ice sickle-like daggers which float around him in formation. Hitsugaya swings his Zanpakuto in an arc, launching the daggers towards his enemies at incredible speeds. And of course my favorite, Hyoten Hyakuso. So in conjunction with Tensou Jorin, which is his ability to subjugate the weather, a huge hole opens up in the clouds and a large amount of snow falls down onto Hitsugaya's opponent. When the snow comes into contact with the opponent, ice flowers sprout all over their body, instantly trapping them in a pillar of ice. He has a lot more abilities, but for the sake of time we're just going to move on. Just know he can freely manipulate ice and control the weather. Now when it comes to Toshiro's combat ability, he's always getting a bad rep for either not finishing off an enemy or not performing at the level people would like him to perform. Versus Xiaolong, he wins, but it's a sloppy win and he needed Gentei off. Versus Yuppie, he does alright, but he doesn't end up killing him in the end. Toshiro's biggest strength is in his setups and his defense. This isn't to say he lacks in offensive power, but most of the time if an enemy is more powerful, he analyzes their strengths and weaknesses, sets a plan to take advantage of whatever he finds, and executes it. Now in his fight against Halibel, Toshiro is keeping up with her very well, and there are even points where he overwhelms her. He's able to keep up with her attacks, match her pace, and the attacks he's mounting are either making her dodge or block. And this is all in his Shikai, by the way. When he goes to Bankai and she goes into her Resurreccion, I will absolutely give her the edge in raw attack power. She got it. That cannot be contested. But aside from that, they are evenly matched, and they pretty much negate each other's abilities and are still comparable in speed and reaction time. Now, some people think that Toshiro isn't on Halibel's level, which makes no sense. They must have it out for Toshiro for some reason. And that Toshiro was only able to keep up with Halibel because they had similar abilities. He uses ice, she uses water, we get it. But this is totally incorrect, and I'm going to tell you why. If he wasn't on her level, he would have been overwhelmed from the start of the battle. Kinda like how Soifone and Baragon went. There was literally nothing she could do against Baragon because he outclassed her in almost every way. As for the other statement about their abilities being similar and that being the reason he could fight her, it ignores the fact that she used her water abilities last. If she could have beaten him with Zeros, she would have done it. If she could have beaten him with the sword, she would have done it. Now I'm going to ask a question here. Is it possible that just maybe both of their strongest techniques happen to be what their main abilities were? That being ice and, I don't know, water? Toshiro comments her Cascada, a water ability, would have been a problem if he didn't put up an ice shield. He never makes a comment like that after seeing her Zero or any other abilities she has. So to say that's the only reason Toshiro could fight her is not a good argument. We literally see her exhaust all of her options and then rely on her water last. So we know Toshiro is strong enough and fast enough to keep up with the third ranked Espada, with raw power being the only thing she clearly has over him. And we know a full resurrected Nnoitora is about as strong as a base Ulquiorra. So with everything on the table, I'm giving this win to Toshiro, and I'm gonna break down why. Halibel is superior to Nnoitora in every way outside of Hierro. This means speed, Reiatsu, destructive power, reaction time, etc. Nnoitora may have fought one of the strongest Shinigami, but if you know Kenpachi's psychology and how he views battle, he basically just brings himself down to your level and plays with you there. Toshiro would analyze and assess Nnoitora's strengths and weaknesses and act accordingly. Also, his Bankai gives him so much versatility, he would be able to attack and defend against Nnoitora, all while setting up traps and getting him into unfavorable positions. There's no need to bring up his sword not being able to cut Nnoitora, as his sword never reached Halibel and he still defeated her, so it really doesn't matter either way. And to top it all off, if Toshiro uses Hyoten Hyakuso in conjunction with Tensou Jorin, and they're there by themselves, there's literally nothing Nnoitora could do to stop it. And mind you, we saw the held back version of that technique, and that was enough to defeat Halibel. and I consider it a defeat because she needed to be saved by outside source. So Toshiro takes this mid to high diff. I started writing a battle script for this video, but it would have been way too long, so let me know if you guys want that. I can do a separate video for that. Like this video, give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Let me know who you guys think would actually win between Toshiro and Nnoitora. Peace out.